3,000 years ago, the Galactic Council deemed humanity a threat and erased Earth from the maps. They thought they had silenced us forever. They were wrong. Emerging from warp, the Daedalus, flagship of the remnant fleet, shuddered as its inertial dampeners fought to compensate. Commander Thomas Johnson gripped the arms of his command chair, his fingers tightening. Before him, the main viewport offered a stark and desolate panorama, a debris field stretching light years in every direction. Twisted metal, shattered continents, and the ghostly shimmer of residual radiation painted a silent testament to genocide. This was what remained of Earth. They believed they could extinguish a species, a voice whispered in Johnson's mind, filled with the dry, academic tones of Professor Eleanor Vance, one of the ghosts of Earth, implanted personalities offering strategic and historical insight. They underestimated the resilience of humanity. Another voice, gruffer and more pragmatic, cut in. Resilience doesn't win wars, Thomas. Resources do. And we're running on fumes. This was General Marcus Thorne, the military strategist, ever the pessimist. Johnson ignored them both, focusing on the overwhelming emptiness where his home, where his family had once existed. 3 millennia, 3,000 years of wandering the void, clinging to survival, fueled by a burning ember of vengeance. The Galactic Council had committed the ultimate sin, and they would pay. Commander, Lieutenant Commander Eva Rostova's voice, crisp and professional, broke through his reverie. Sensors are picking up a weak distress signal, originating from a Galactic Council research station, designation. Apparently abandoned, sir. It's located approximately 1 light-year from our current position. Abandoned. Nothing in the galaxy was ever truly abandoned by the Council. Johnson frowned. Report. The signal is faint, Commander, severely degraded, but it's definitely a Council emergency beacon. Standard encryption protocols. Rostova paused, her brow furrowed. Also, sir, our long-range scans indicate that we are critically low on essential supplies. Fuel reserves are at 18%, ammunition at 22%. We need to resupply soon, or we won't be able to engage any Council patrols we come across. The voices in his head intensified. A trap, Thomas. It has to be, Thorne insisted. The Council wouldn't just leave a station unguarded. Vance countered, but consider the potential intelligence, Commander. A research station could hold valuable data on the Council's current strategies, their propaganda efforts, information that could save lives. Johnson hesitated. He knew Thorne was right. The Council was cunning, ruthless. But Vance's argument held merit. They were desperate, and desperation made people take risks. He closed his eyes for a moment, recalling the last time he saw his family during a holocall just before the attack on Earth. His blood ran cold. Commander, Rostova prompted, her voice filled with concern. The signal is weakening. We're losing it. He opened his eyes, the grief momentarily replaced by a cold, hard persistence. Plot a course for the research station, Lieutenant Commander. Maximum stealth. I want the Daedalus and 2 escorts to approach cautiously. Weapons hot, shields at minimum, prioritize sensor sweeps. And Rostova, sir. Even if it's a trap, understanding the Council's current tactics is crucial for our survival. We can't afford to be caught off guard again. As the Daedalus adjusted its trajectory, Johnson stared at the sensor readings displayed on his console. The research station was old, its design unlike anything he had seen in Council archives. It looked damaged, scarred by what appeared to be recent energy weapon fire. Something had happened there. Something the Council didn't want anyone to know about. His family's screams echoed in his mind. Prepare a boarding party, Johnson ordered, his voice flat. I want a covert entry, extreme caution, non-lethal force if possible, but be ready for anything. The boarding party, led by Rostova, stepped through the breached airlock. The interior of the research station was a tomb of shadows, the only light filtering in from the jagged tear in the metal. A metallic tang like old blood and ozone hung heavy in the air, eerily silent. Suddenly, crimson beams lanced out of the darkness. Automated defense systems. Down. Rostova barked, diving behind an overturned equipment crate. The boarding party scattered, returning fire with pulse rifles. EMP grenades bloomed in bursts of crackling energy, silencing the sentry turrets one by one. The air filled with the acrid smell of burnt circuits. Full breach and clear. A voice echoed in Johnson's mind, the military strategist, one of the ghosts of Earth. Too reckless, countered the engineer. Potential for valuable tech, cautious approach. Rostova, ignoring the internal debate raging in Johnson's head, signaled a sweep. They moved through the corridors, weapons raised. Rostova stopped, pointing to a discarded Council energy pistol lying near a pool of dark fluid. Blood, and more streaks along the wall, a recent struggle. They reached a locked door, a complex series of glowing runes etched into its surface. Security lock, heavy encryption, Jax, the tech specialist, reported, kneeling to connect his interface cable. Gonna take a minute. While Jax worked, Sergeant Miller, manning the sensor array, spoke up. Movement 10 meters ahead, multiple signatures, humanoid. A distorted voice crackled over the station's internal comm system. Static, then a desperate plea, repeated in a language none of them recognized. It was permeated with panic. Johnson's voice, calm and measured, cut through the tension in Rostova's helmet comm. Proceed with extreme caution, Rostova. Could be a trap or something far worse. Jax swore under his breath, fingers flying across his console. Almost there. The runes on the door pulsed, then winked out. The heavy door hissed open, revealing a hidden laboratory. Inside, a single containment cell dominated the room, and within that cell, huddled and shivering, was an Andromedan, Astra. Her skin was the color of amethyst, her large eyes wide with fear. A gash on her forehead oozed a viscous, blue fluid. She was disoriented, struggling to focus. Stay back, Astra rasped, her voice weak. This station, it's a weapons lab, they're building something terrible. Rostova moved further into the room, scanning the consoles when she found a schematic. Sir, I'm looking at schematics for a planetary destabilization device. It's designed to trigger earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on a global scale. The military strategist's voice boomed in Johnson's mind. Destroy it, destroy the station. Now, we can't let them have that weapon. No, Astra gasped, struggling to sit up. It's almost complete. They intend to test it soon. She's lying, the strategist insisted. They all lie. I was imprisoned for trying to sabotage the project, Astra said, looking directly at Rostova, for trying to expose what they were doing. Johnson weighed the options, the ghost's voices warring in his mind. Rostova, secure the prisoner. I want to question her. Suddenly, a barrage of pulse fire erupted from the corridor behind them. Council soldiers, they'd been flanked. We're pinned down, Rostova yelled into her comm. We have the package, but we need immediate extraction. Daedalus, prepare for rapid extraction, Johnson ordered, his voice hardening. All hands brace for impact. As the boarding party fought to hold off the council soldiers, Astra, wincing in pain, managed to speak. The device. It will be ready in days. They plan to test it on a populated planet. The boarding party engaged, pulse rifles spitting emerald bolts into the cramped corridor. Council soldiers, clad in their rigid white armor, returned fire, the energy blasts scorching the metal walls. Astra, move. Rostova barked, shoving the Andromedan scientist behind an overturned crate. The air crackled with discharged energy, the acrid smell of ozone filling the air. Rostova yanked a flashbang grenade from her belt. Frag out, she yelled, tossing the device down the corridor. A blinding white light erupted, followed by a deafening boom. The council soldiers staggered, momentarily disoriented. Go, go, go! Rostova screamed, leading the charge forward. Astra, despite her initial fear, proved resourceful. A security drone, its multifaceted eyes glowing red, whirred into view, targeting the boarding party. Before Rostova could react, Astra raised a hand, uttering a series of rapid clicks and whistles. The drone's red eyes flickered, then turned a menacing green as it swung around, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire on the confused Council soldiers. Inside Johnson's mind, the ghosts of Earth argued. "Leave her. She's a liability," barked the military strategist, his voice a gruff echo in Johnson's thoughts. "Every second we waste puts the entire team at risk." The historian countered, "But think of the knowledge she possesses, the secrets of the Council, of Earth's destruction." Johnson sharpened his eyes, overriding the strategist. "Rostova, prioritize Astra's safety," he commanded over the comms. "Her knowledge is vital. We can't afford to lose her." Just then, the Daedalus shuddered as it locked onto the station. A boarding ramp slammed against the exterior, and a heavily armed security team poured out, laying down withering cover fire. "Extraction team inbound." A voice crackled over the comms. As the boarding party retreated, a desperate Council soldier squeezed off a shot, hitting the boarding ramp. A section buckled and gave way, sending 2 crew members tumbling into the void. Their screams were cut short by the vacuum of space. "Damn it," Rostova cursed. Astra, despite the chaos, remained calm. "This way," she urged, pointing to a maintenance hatch. "I know the station's layout. We can bypass the main checkpoint through the service tunnels." The tunnels were cramped and dark, the air thick with the smell of ozone and decay. As they rounded a corner, they were met by a squad of heavily armored Council soldiers, their weapons raised. The corridor erupted in another firefight, the close quarters amplifying the sounds of gunfire and screams. Men fell on both sides, their bodies twitching in the flickering light. Rostova took a blast to the shoulder, staggering backward. "I'm hit," she gasped, clutching her arm. Astra, without hesitation, knelt beside Rostova, her slender fingers probing the wound. "The energy discharge has cauterized the flesh," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I can stabilize it, but you need immediate medical attention." She produced a small device from her belt, emitting a beam of blue light that sealed the wound, halting the bleeding. With Rostova supported by another crew member, they pressed on, finally reaching the Daedalus. The boarding ramp hissed closed behind them, sealing them inside. "Get us out of here," Johnson roared. As the Daedalus disengaged from the station, Council fighters swarmed, unleashing a volley of missiles. 2 found their mark, slamming into the ship's engines. Alarms blared as the ship lurched violently. "Engines offline, we've lost primary propulsion," the chief engineer reported. Johnson thumped his hand on the console. "Emergency repairs. Get those engines back online now, prepare for possible pursuit." Astra approached Johnson, her eyes filled with urgency. "The device, the planet-killing weapon. It utilizes a unique energy source," she said. "A type of dark matter unlike anything I've ever seen. It's highly unstable, incredibly difficult to contain." "How unstable?" Johnson demanded. "The Council plans to test the device on a populated planet," Astra revealed, her voice barely a whisper. "Within the next 72 hours. The ghosts of Earth erupted in fury. 72 hours. We don't have time for this. Strike now, hit their homeworld, burn it to the ground." The military strategist screamed. "Let them taste the same fire they unleashed on us." Johnson ignored the bloodlust. "Astra, I need everything you have on this device," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Weaknesses, countermeasures, anything that can help us stop it." Astra nodded, accessing the Daedalus's databanks. As she worked, her fingers flying across the console, she paused, her face paling. "There's something else," she said, her voice trembling. "I found a hidden communication log. Someone within your fleet. They've been transmitting information to the Council." Johnson's blood ran cold. "A traitor." "The transmissions are encrypted, but the timestamps, they coincide with our every move," Astra confirmed. "They know we're here, they know what we're planning." Johnson turned, his gaze sweeping across the bridge, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Find them," he ordered, his voice a low growl. "Find the traitor. Our mission, our very survival, depends on it." The fate of countless lives rested on his next decision. The wormhole shimmered, spitting the lead ship of the remnant fleet into the inky blackness near the Xylo's outpost. Thomas Johnson, his face etched with the weight of 3 millennia, stared out at the swirling purple and ochre landscape of the gas giant looming in the viewport. The ghosts whispered in his mind, their voices a constant spectral chorus. "A waste of resources, Thomas, strike at the heart." That was Eisenhower, ever the pragmatist. Another, softer voice, likely Curie, countered, "But knowledge is power, Thomas. This outpost might hold secrets." He ignored them for now. He addressed the fleet, his voice amplified across the comms, a low rumble that resonated with suppressed fury. "For 3,000 years, they believed they had silenced us. Today, we remind them that humanity never forgets." A wave of acknowledgments flooded his console, the silent affirmation of a people forged in loss and tempered by unwavering purpose. The raid on the Xylo's outpost was swift and brutal. Human Marines, clad in sleek black armor that seemed to absorb the very light around them, moved through the corridors like shadows, their pulse rifles spitting bolts of deadly energy. The Xylosians, a species known more for their bureaucratic efficiency than martial prowess, offered little resistance. Johnson, however, wasn't interested in the outpost itself but its data stores, and one particular prisoner. Astra, an Andromedan scientist, was found huddled in a darkened cell, her violet eyes wide with fear and defiance. Her skin, a shimmering silver, was marred by bruises, testament to the Council's methods of persuasion. "You think you know the truth about what happened," she spat, her voice raspy, "but the Council has been lying to you for centuries." Johnson studied her, his gaze unwavering. "The Council erased Earth. That's the only truth I need to know." He ordered her taken to the Daedalus, his flagship. Days turned into weeks as the Daedalus ripped through the void, heading towards a destination known only to Johnson and a select few. Astra, initially hostile, began to thaw, her scientific curiosity piqued by the human technology, which was both familiar and alien to her. She saw in it echoes of designs her own people had pioneered, before the Council twisted their creations into instruments of destruction. One evening, Johnson found her poring over schematics in the Daedalus's research bay. "Why are you helping us?" he asked, his voice imbued with suspicion. Astra looked up, her violet eyes meeting his. "Because I know what my people did. We created the weapon that erased Earth. We were told it was for defense, a deterrent. We were lied to, and I can't live with that." The ghosts roared in Johnson's mind. Liar, deception. Eisenhower's voice cut through the noise. "Thomas, she possesses knowledge we require. Use her, but do not trust her." Their destination, a remote, uncharted system at the heart of which lay a single, unassuming planetoid. As they approached, sensors detected a faint energy signature, a whisper from the past. It was a Council research facility, abandoned for centuries, rumored to contain information about Project Black Star, the weapon that had annihilated Earth. Inside the facility's decaying archives, Johnson discovered a hidden chamber. Within it, a holographic projection flickered to life, revealing a Council meeting held days before Earth's destruction. He saw Xyler, a Granic scientist, vehemently arguing against the use of Black Star, his reptilian features contorted in anguish. "We cannot commit genocide. This weapon is too dangerous," he pleaded. But the other Council members, their faces cold and resolute, overruled him. Eisenhower's voice was a harsh rasp in Johnson's mind. "He was still part of the machine that erased us. He deserves to die." Curie countered, "But to execute him now would be an injustice, Thomas." He opposed them. Johnson clenched his fist clenched. He saw Astra watching him, her face etched with a mixture of hope and fear. He had a choice to make: revenge or justice. The fate of humanity and perhaps the galaxy hung in the balance. The Daedalus warped out of the system, leaving the planetoid behind. Its destination, the former location of Earth. Johnson had made his decision. He wouldn't become the monster they said humanity was. Not yet. The successful raid on the Council supply depot, though a boon in much-needed resources, had painted a target on their backs. The galaxy-wide alert, a silent alarm rippling through the Council's network, hummed in the background of every sensor sweep. "They're tightening the net," Astra said, her voice tight as she studied the holographic display. "The Council has deployed new long-range detection technology. It's designed to identify ships with human-originating tech, our stealth tactics. They're becoming less effective." Johnson stood on the bridge, the weight of her words settling heavily on him. 3,000 years of hiding, of scraping by on the fringes, and now this. How much less effective? Significantly. "They're using a phased array emitter, sweeping the galaxy with a unique energy signature. We can't simply mask our emissions anymore. We have to actively counter it." "Damn it," Johnson muttered, his gaze hardening. "Adjust course. Implement Epsilon 9 evasion maneuvers. Let's remind them why humanity excelled at astrogation." The bridge crew responded instantly, their fingers dancing across consoles as the ship began a series of complex, unpredictable turns. The artificial gravity fluctuated, a subtle reminder of the forces at play. Minutes stretched into an eternity as a Council patrol ship, a sleek, predatory vessel, appeared on their long-range sensors. It was on a direct intercept course. "They're getting close," Lieutenant Hall reported, his voice strained. "Too close." "Silent running," Johnson ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "All decks prepare for complete energy suppression. We're going dark." The ship groaned as power was diverted to essential systems, the lights dimming to a bare minimum. The hum of the engines faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Every crew member held their breath, the tension palpable. Astra worked furiously at her console, her fingers flying across the interface. "They're pinging us. The energy signature is faint, but it's there. They're definitely suspicious." The patrol ship loomed closer, its sensors sweeping across their position. Johnson could almost feel its gaze, a cold, calculating presence in the vast darkness. He gripped the arms of his command chair, his nucleus tightening. "I've identified a vulnerability in their detection technology," Astra announced, her voice cutting through the tension. "It's a harmonic resonance frequency. If we can match it, we can create a null field, effectively masking our energy signature." "And the catch?" Johnson asked, his eyes narrowed. "It requires a risky modification to our own ship systems. We'd have to reroute power through the main deflector array, creating a feedback loop. If it fails, it could overload the entire system, leaving us completely exposed." Johnson hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He glanced at the holographic projections of the ghosts of Earth flickering around the bridge, their faces etched with concern. "Risk is inherent in any engagement, Thomas." The voice of Amelia Earhart, the famed pilot, echoed in his mind. "But inaction guarantees defeat." "The technology is unstable, Commander," cautioned Albert Einstein, his brow furrowed. "Tampering with it could have unforeseen consequences." "We have no choice," Johnson said, his voice firm. "We trust Astra's judgment. Begin the modification process, and someone get me a bottle of scotch." He watched Astra, seeing not an alien, but a desperate and brilliant engineer trying to atone for the sins of her people. The modification process was a delicate dance of engineering and improvisation. Technicians worked feverishly, rerouting power cables and recalibrating systems under Astra's watchful eye. The ship shuddered as the power surged, pushing the aging technology to its limits. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from the engine room, followed by a deafening bang. The ship lurched violently, throwing crew members from their stations. Alarms blared and the lights flickered and died, plunging a section of the ship into darkness. "Power surge," Hall yelled from his station. "Life support is down on decks 4 through 7. Panic threatened to engulf the crew, but Johnson remained calm. "Report. Main power conduit overloaded," a voice crackled over the comm system. "We're rerouting emergency power, but it's not enough to maintain life support. They'll suffocate in minutes. Johnson turned to Astra, his eyes filled with a mixture of desperation and trust. Can you fix it? Astra didn't hesitate. There's a bypass circuit we can use. It's risky, but it might work. Together, they raced through the darkened corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They reached the damaged conduit, sparks flying from the exposed wires. Working side by side, they rerouted the power, improvising a solution with whatever materials they could find. Sweat dripped down their faces as they worked, their hands brushing against each other in the cramped space. Finally, with a surge of power, the lights flickered back on and the hum of life support returned. A collective sigh of relief swept through the ship. Astra looked at Johnson, her eyes shining with triumph. We did it. He met her gaze, a charged, intimate look passing between them. We did. The modification was completed and the moment of truth arrived. They activated Astra's countermeasure, a wave of energy rippling outwards, masking their ship's signature. They ran a simulated patrol, dodging Council sensors with ease. It's working, Hall reported, his voice filled with relief. We're invisible, but their respite was short-lived. Intercepted Council communications revealed that the patrol ship that nearly discovered them had reported unusual energy fluctuations in the area. The Council was investigating the anomaly. They're closing in, Johnson said, his voice grim. Prepare for potential engagement, and bring the captured Council tech online. All of it. A murmur of dissent rippled through the crew. Using their technology, are we stooping to their level? It's a betrayal of everything we stand for. Another voice protested. Johnson furrowed his eyebrows, the ethical implications weighing heavily on him. He consulted with the ghosts of Earth, their opinions as divided as the crew's. We must maintain our moral high ground, Mahatma Gandhi urged, his face etched with disapproval. To use their weapons is to become them. Survival is paramount, Commander, Sun Tzu countered, his voice pragmatic. Adapt to the enemy's tactics, use their strengths against them. Astra stepped forward, her voice firm. We can't afford to be sentimental. This technology could save lives. If we let our principles condemn us, then Earth truly will be gone forever. Johnson wrestled with the decision, torn between his desire to maintain his humanity and the need to protect his people. Finally, he made his choice. Authorize the use of Council technology, but implement safeguards. We will not allow it to corrupt our own systems. The crew worked quickly, integrating the captured technology into their defenses. Energy shields flickered to life and weapon systems powered up, bolstering their firepower. The remnant fleet braced themselves, ready to face whatever the Council threw at them. But then, Astra made a discovery that changed everything. Commander, she said, her voice hushed. I've found something in the Council technology, a hidden message. It seems there were Council members who opposed Earth's destruction. They're planning a secret meeting. Johnson stared at her, his mind racing. Can we trust them, or is this a trap? The glimmer of hope was tantalizing, but the risk was immense. Johnson exhaled, the tension thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. He keyed the comm. Initiate transmission sequence Alpha Omega 7. Encrypt with captured Council key 37 Kilo Romeo. Send. The bridge hummed with anticipation. Every eye was glued to the central display, watching the coded message pulse out into the void, a desperate gamble for an alliance that might not even exist. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then, a blip. A faint signal, barely registering against the background radiation. We have a response, Captain, Lieutenant Hall reported, her voice tight. Encrypted with the same key. Johnson leaned forward, decrypt and display. The message scrolled across the screen, stark and urgent. We concur. Rendezvous point designated, Kepler 186F orbital station. Coordinate shift 73 mark. Time 400 Galactic Standard. Caution advised. They are watching. Astra stepped forward, her brow furrowed. Captain, this feels wrong, too easy. The Council doesn't make mistakes like this. It could be a trap. Johnson considered her words, the ghosts of Earth whispering conflicting advice in his mind. Trust no one, one echoed, the voice of a long-dead spymaster. Desperate times demand desperate measures, countered another, a brilliant tactician from Earth's forgotten wars. He focused his mind. We proceed, but with extreme caution. Lieutenant Hall, prepare for a silent approach. Maximum cloak, ECM at full power. I want every sensor on high alert. The remnant fleet, a handful of battered warships, slipped through the darkness, cloaked in stolen technology. As they neared Kepler 186F, the sensors painted a grim picture. Multiple Council warships, their energy signatures suppressed, lurked in the shadows like predators waiting to pounce. Captain, Hall reported, her voice imbued with urgency. Multiple contacts decloaking. Bearing all vectors, we're surrounded. Alarms blared, red lights flashed. The space station, once a beacon of hope, now pulsed with malevolent energy as weapon batteries charged. It's a trap, Astra shouted, her eyes wide with horror. Evasive maneuvers. Johnson barked, his voice calm amidst the chaos. Release the decoys, divert power to shields, return fire. The remnant fleet erupted in a blaze of defiance. Laser fire crisscrossed the void as the human ships danced between the larger Council warships. Johnson, his hands a blur across the tactical console, orchestrated a desperate retreat, using the captured Council tech to create a holographic mirage, a phantom fleet that drew the enemy's fire. We're taking heavy damage, Captain, Hall yelled. Shields at 40%, casualties reported on decks 2 and 4. Just as they seemed to be breaking free, a new crisis erupted. Captain, the captured Council tech is malfunctioning, a frantic engineer reported. It's overloading. If it blows, it'll take out our cloak and ECM. The ship lurched violently as the stolen technology sputtered and sparked, bathing the bridge in an eerie blue light. Astra, can you fix it? Johnson demanded, his eyes fixed on the failing system. Astra hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded, her face pale but resolute. I'll try, but it's unstable. I need to get inside. Without waiting for permission, she sprinted towards the access panel, ignoring the sparks and the acrid smell of burning circuitry. She ripped open the panel and plunged her hands into the tangled mess of wires, her fingers moving with a speed and precision that belied her earlier claims of limited knowledge. Almost, she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. Then, with a final surge of power, the system stabilized. The blue light faded and the ship shuddered back to life. It's fixed, Captain, Astra gasped, collapsing back against the wall. But I found something, a hidden data cache. It's horrifying. Johnson rushed to her side, his face grim. What is it? Astra's voice trembled. It's a Council plan, a weapon. They call it Project Null. The data scrolled across the screen, revealing schematics, simulations, and chilling strategic assessments. Project Null wasn't just a weapon, it was a planet killer, a system destroyer, designed to eliminate entire star systems deemed unstable. And humanity was the intended first target. Johnson stared at the screen, his blood running cold. The ghosts of Earth, usually a cacophony of voices, were now unified in their assessment. A single chilling chorus. Annihilate them. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through him, but beneath the anger a cold dread began to dawn. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about survival. Not just for humanity, but for countless other species who might fall victim to the Council's genocidal ambitions. They were planning to erase us from existence, Johnson said, his voice a low growl. Astra nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and tenacity. But it gets worse. I know where it is. The main research facility is located near the galactic core, heavily guarded. Johnson turned to face her, his expression grim. Can we stop it? Maybe, Astra replied. But it won't be easy. There are multiple failsafes in place. The facility will be impenetrable without the proper codes. Johnson looked around the bridge, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his crew, each one etched with exhaustion and despair. The remnant fleet was running on fumes both literally and figuratively. Morale was plummeting. Some were already whispering about a desperate, all-out attack on the Council capital, a suicide mission born of rage and desperation. He knew he had to make a choice that would determine the fate of humanity. "Captain," Hall said, her voice barely a whisper. "We're detecting a small vessel leaving the space station. Energy signature matches the dissenting Council member's ship." Johnson's eyes narrowed. "Are they alive?" Astra gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "It can't be unless—" Her voice trailed off, lost in thought. "Captain, the files on Project Null. They mentioned a failsafe, a human operative within the project who could shut it down. Her name was Lyra." Johnson stared at her, his palms sweating. "Lyra, you know her." Astra's voice cracked. "She's my sister." Johnson stood frozen, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him. He had a mission to complete, a weapon to disable, and a choice to make. Trust Astra, potentially leading his people into another trap, or abandon the mission and face certain doom. "Helm, full burn. I want those Council traitors within hailing distance now." Johnson barked, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Around him, the bridge crew of the Daedalus moved with practiced efficiency, rerouting power and calibrating sensors. "Comms, prepare a tight beam transmission. Let's see what our esteemed defectors have to say for themselves." Astra stood beside him, her Andromedan features tight with a worry he hadn't seen before. The revelation that Council members were trying to escape, that Project Null wasn't universally supported, had shaken her. "Commander, you believe them?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Belief is a luxury we can't afford, Astra," Johnson replied, his gaze unwavering. "But I'll take any edge I can get. Prepare yourself, it could be a trap." The Daedalus, flanked by 2 escort frigates, closed the distance with the fleeing vessel. It was a modified transport, civilian-grade but hastily retrofitted with enhanced engines. As they drew within range, a garbled transmission crackled over the comms. "Daedalus, this is Counselor Valerius. Requesting assistance. Project Null must be stopped." The voice was weak, punctuated by static and the sound of labored breathing. "Patch them through," Johnson ordered. The main viewscreen flickered, resolving into a shaky image of a dimly lit cabin. 2 figures lay slumped against a bulkhead, their alien forms battered and bleeding. One, presumably Valerius, struggled to speak. "Project Null is nearing completion. The Council intends to use it against. Valerius coughed, a spray of crimson misting the air. "There are failsafe personnel, individuals who can stop it. You must reach them quickly." Johnson leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. "Failsafe personnel, who are they, and what is their connection to Project Null?" He turned to Astra. "You know anything about this?" Astra hesitated, her expression troubled. "The failsafe. It's a theoretical protocol, designed to prevent unauthorized activation. But I never thought—" She paused, gathering her thoughts. "My sister, Lyra. She was instrumental in developing the weapon's core algorithms. She would have known about the failsafe." "Your sister?" Johnson's skepticism was evident. The same sister who helped design a weapon capable of wiping out entire star systems. She was a brilliant scientist, Commander," Astra insisted, her voice pleading. "But she also became disillusioned with the Council's corruption. She confided in me that she secretly sought to sabotage Project Null from within." Johnson studied her, searching for any sign of deception. The ghosts of Earth whispered in his mind, urging caution, reminding him of humanity's past betrayals. Yet looking into Astra's earnest face, he sensed a genuine desperation. "All right," he conceded. "I'll trust you, but if this is a play, Astra, you'll be the first against the wall." He turned back to the viewscreen. "Valerius, where are these failsafe personnel located?" Valerius, barely conscious, mumbled a set of coordinates. "The research facility, on Cygnus VII, heavily guarded, but Lyra." She knows the security protocols. Helm, plot a course for Cygnus VII. Maximum speed, Johnson commanded. We're running out of time. The Daedalus surged forward, its engines pushing it to the limits. As they approached Cygnus VII, the research facility loomed into view, a colossal structure of metal and duracrete, overflowing with energy weapons and sensor arrays. Elite Council patrol ships orbited the facility, their sleek hulls glinting in the harsh light of the system's binary suns. Cloaking device online, the helmsman announced. We are approaching the facility undetected. Johnson assembled a small infiltration team in the Daedalus's launch bay. Astra stood beside him, her face a mask of dedication. Remember the plan, Johnson said, his voice low and urgent. We use the stolen Council transport to bypass the perimeter defenses. Astra, you'll disable the internal security grid. I'll handle the rest. As the transport detached from the Daedalus and began its approach to the facility, a high-pitched whine filled the comms. Commander, we're receiving a priority signal, the comms officer reported. It's a distress call from inside the facility. Johnson frowned. Patch it through. The signal cleared, resolving into a fragmented and distorted voice. This is Lyra. They know I tried to sabotage Project Null. I'm a prisoner, facing execution. The voice broke, replaced by a burst of static. Vital information, facility layout, security protocols, activation sequence. But the signal is too weak. The transmission faded, leaving only silence. Johnson exchanged a grim look with Astra. She's in trouble, Astra whispered, her eyes wide with fear. We have to rescue her. We have a mission, Astra, Johnson countered, his voice hard. Project Null is about to be activated. We can't risk everything on a rescue attempt. But Commander, her knowledge, Astra pleaded. She knows the facility better than anyone. She may have a way to disarm the weapon remotely. We can't afford to leave her behind. Johnson hesitated, torn between his duty and his growing feelings for Astra. The ghosts of Earth whispered in his mind, warning him against sentimentality, urging him to prioritize the mission above all else. But he saw the desperation in Astra's eyes, the genuine fear for her sister's life. He knew that Lyra could be their only hope. All right, he said, his voice resolute. When going in, but we do this my way. We secure Lyra and then we disable Project Null. No deviations, understood. Astra nodded, her face lighting up with relief. Understood, Commander, thank you. The transport slipped through the facility's outer defenses, navigating the labyrinthine corridors with the stolen security codes. As they approached the detention block, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. We've been detected, the pilot shouted. They're onto us. Before they could react, a squad of heavily armed Council soldiers rounded the corner, their weapons trained on the transport. Hold it right there, traitors, a gruff voice commanded. You are surrounded, drop your weapons and surrender. Johnson drew his sidearm, a pulse pistol of human design. That's not going to happen, he said, his voice cold and determined. Prepare for battle. The transport doors hissed open and the infiltration team charged out, weapons blazing. Pulse fire ripped through the corridor, ricocheting off the duracrete walls. The Council soldiers returned fire, their energy rifles spitting bolts of plasma. Astra fought with a ferocity that surprised Johnson, her andromedan physiology granting her enhanced speed and agility. She moved like a blur, dodging enemy fire and taking down soldiers with precise shots. But the team was outnumbered, outgunned. The Council soldiers were elite, well-trained and heavily armored. As the firefight raged, a towering figure emerged from the ranks of the Council soldiers, a ruthless commander with cybernetic implants and a predatory gaze. He pointed a finger directly at Astra. Traitor, he roared, his voice amplified by a vocoder. You will pay for your betrayal. He turned to his troops. Kill the humans, bring the Andromedan to me. The commander advanced on Astra, his energy blade humming with power. As he moved, he spoke again. Your sister was not acting alone, you know. She was part of a larger resistance movement within the council, one that we have been watching for a long time. The air crackled with energy. Blaster fire ripped through the detention block, chewing chunks out of the plascrete walls. Red beams crisscrossed the corridor, forcing the team to hug the limited cover. A guttural scream echoed as a soldier from the remnant fleet went down, clutching his chest, his armor smoking. Johnson barked orders, his voice tight with urgency. Fall back. Consolidate at the next junction. Cover me. Astra, her mind still reeling from the commander's revelation about Lyra's resistance involvement, stumbled, misjudging the distance to the next piece of cover. A bolt of plasma seared past her head, close enough to singe her hair. Astra down. Johnson roared, diving forward. He slammed into her, knocking her to the ground just as another blast slammed into the wall where she'd been standing. He rolled on top of her, shielding her with his body. A searing pain ripped through his left shoulder as a stray shot grazed his armor, burning through the protective layers. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain. The council commander, a hulking figure in black armor, emerged from behind a reinforced doorway. So the Andromedan is working with the terrorists, he sneered, his voice amplified by his helmet's vocoder. It seems Lyra wasn't just a prisoner. She intentionally sabotaged the facility's security systems, allowing you to infiltrate. Aiding and abetting, very interesting. 2 guards dragged Lyra into the main area of the detention block. Her face was bruised and her eyes were swollen, but her gaze was defiant. As the guards shoved her towards a holding cell, she subtly manipulated her restraints, her fingers dancing over the metallic surface. A faint, almost imperceptible energy signature pulsed from her position, a coded message being transmitted, revealing the weapon's activation sequence. For your treachery, Lyra, you will be made an example, the commander announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. Prepare for immediate execution. Let this be a lesson to any other dissenters within this facility. Johnson cursed under his breath. We can't let that happen. He glanced at the remaining members of his team. Now, all weapons fire on that doorway. Give us cover. The team unleashed a furious barrage of blaster fire, forcing the commander and his guards to take cover. The detention block's defenses flared to life, energy shields shimmering into existence, deflecting the incoming fire. Astra, I need you to find a way around, Johnson said, his voice strained. Use your knowledge of this place. Get to Lyra. Astra nodded, her face pale but resolute. There's a maintenance tunnel behind the cell block. It's not heavily guarded. She glanced at Johnson's shoulder. But you're injured. I'll be fine, just go. Astra disappeared into the chaos, heading towards the maintenance access panel. The narrow tunnel was dark and cramped, the air thick with the smell of ozone and stale coolant. She crawled through the tight space, her heart pounding in her chest. Johnson, ignoring the searing pain in his shoulder, advanced on the council commander, firing his weapon with deadly accuracy. He weaved between energy blasts, using his superior agility to close the distance. The commander raised his weapon, but Johnson was too fast. He slammed into the commander, knocking him off balance, and disarmed him with a swift, brutal move. Where's the failsafe? Johnson snarled, pressing the barrel of his blaster against the commander's helmet. For Project Null, where is it? The commander hesitated, then spat in Johnson's face. You'll never stop it. Johnson slammed the commander's head against the wall. Wrong answer. Meanwhile, Astra reached Lyra's cell. She worked quickly, her fingers flying over the locking mechanism. With a click, the restraints fell away. Lyra slumped forward, her body limp. Astra, she whispered, her voice weak. You came. Astra gently lowered her sister to the ground. I'm getting you out of here. Lyra coughed, blood trickling from her lips. No time, Project Null. It's already activating. I remotely initiated a failsafe protocol, but it requires manual override. At the central control console. Astra stared at her sister, her face etched with horror. But you're hurt, I can't leave you. Lyra gripped Astra's hand. You have to, humanity, the galaxy, It depends on you. Go now. Astra hesitated, torn between her loyalty to her sister and her duty to stop the weapon. Go, Lyra insisted, her voice growing weaker. Astra looked at Johnson, who nodded grimly. I'll protect her, go. Johnson helped Astra up and sent her on her way. As soon as she was gone, the alarms blared even louder. Reinforcements were coming. Lyra, we gotta go. I can't move. The damage is done. I can delay the timer, giving Astra just enough time. Astra sprinted through the corridors, her mind racing. She reached the central control console, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The system was locked down, a secondary protocol preventing her from accessing the failsafe controls. A message flashed on the screen. Emergency override requires authorization level Omega. She saw a new message. Incoming transmission. She clicked the link. Sister, I know you are there. You have to hurry. They have me and the human. We are delaying them, but you must decide: save us or save all of the galaxy. Her breath hitched. Defend the cosmos and doom her sister. Save her sister and let the weapon activate. Astra paused, her fingers hovering over the console. A power reroute. A surge to overload the approaching reinforcements. Save her sister and Johnson, but doom her own mission. The galaxy. She rerouted the power, sending a surge of energy to the detention block, buying them precious seconds. Now she had to get out. The facility was going into lockdown. She had to complete the shutdown sequence from outside. The power surge slammed through the facility, not just into Project Null, but into the very veins of its defenses. The red alert klaxons intensified, morphing into a shrill, unbearable shriek. The Council soldiers, eyes glowing with unnatural intensity, moved with a speed and ferocity that hadn't been there moments before. Their energy weapons crackled with overcharged power, leaving trails of ozone in the air. Astra sprinted down the corridor, Lyra struggling to keep pace. This way, the failsafe override is just ahead, Lyra gasped, clutching her side. Astra rounded a corner only to be confronted by a solid, seamless wall of dark metal. No door, no seams, just cold, unyielding alloy. That wasn't on the schematics, Astra stated, her voice tinged with disbelief. The metal hummed with an energy signature she didn't recognize, something far older and more sophisticated than the rest of the facility. Meanwhile, in the detention block, Johnson slid behind a toppled console, the air thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt circuitry. He ripped a power conduit from the wall, sparks flying, and jammed it into a nearby water pipe, creating a makeshift electrified puddle. As the first wave of soldiers rounded the corner, weapons raised, he triggered the trap. The water shimmered, then erupted in a shower of blue sparks, sending the soldiers convulsing to the ground. It bought him seconds, precious seconds. Astra ran her hand over the door's surface, feeling for any weakness, any access point. There's a resonance frequency, hidden beneath a layer of encryption. Council tech, but older, she muttered. I need time. Back in the detention block, the Council soldiers were recovering, their enhanced physiology allowing them to shake off the effects of the electric shock. Johnson grabbed a fallen energy rifle, its power cell flickering erratically. He fired, the bolt streaking across the room, vaporizing a section of the wall and sending debris flying. He used the chaos to his advantage, kicking a loose panel into the path of the advancing soldiers, creating another momentary obstacle. Lyra, her face pale, pointed to a small access panel near the floor. Divert power from the environmental regulators to the weapons core programming. There's a hidden vulnerability, a failsafe within the failsafe. Astra nodded grimly. Risky, it could overload the entire system. We don't have a choice, Lyra replied, her voice barely a whisper. Below, Johnson was out of cover, trading fire with the Council soldiers. Each shot was a gamble, the energy rifle spitting sparks and threatening to explode in his hands. He dodged and weaved, his movements a blur of controlled aggression. One soldier lunged, a vibro blade glinting in the dim light. Johnson parried the blow with the rifle, the impact jarring his arm. He disarmed the soldier with a swift kick, then slammed the butt of the rifle into his temple, sending him crashing to the ground. Astra worked feverishly at the access panel, her fingers flying across the interface. I'm rerouting power, but the system is fighting me. It's unstable. She glanced at Lyra, a mixture of fear and persistence in her eyes. This could be it. Johnson knew he was running out of time. The soldiers were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. He activated his comm. This is Johnson, fall back. Get to the rendezvous point, I'll cover you. Silence. That's an order, he barked. He didn't wait for a response. He knew they would obey. He charged forward, a human whirlwind of fury and desperation, drawing the enemy's fire. Astra took a deep breath and initiated the final sequence. The control panel flickered violently, throwing off showers of sparks. The air crackled with energy. Here we go, she whispered. The override sequence completed. Project Null shuddered, groaning under the strain. Pulses of raw energy erupted from the core, tearing through the facility's structure. The lights flickered and died, plunging the corridor into darkness. Alarms blared, a cacophony of warnings and imminent destruction. Johnson sprinted through the collapsing detention block, the walls groaning and buckling around him. He reached a grav lift just as the floor gave way beneath him. He leaped, grabbing onto the edge of the lift platform, his fingers scrabbling for purchase. The lift lurched upwards, carrying him towards the upper levels, leaving the collapsing detention block behind. Astra stumbled out of the facility, coughing in the thick, smoke-filled air. The structure was visibly destabilizing, chunks of metal and concrete raining down around her. Then she saw him. Lying amidst the debris, his face bloodied, his arm twisted at an unnatural angle. Johnson. Johnson, she cried, rushing to his side. He looked up at her, a weak smile on his face. Took you long enough. Lyra's voice crackled over Astra's comm. Astra, in my quarters, hidden archive, resistance cells. Her voice faded, then went silent. Astra looked down at Johnson, then back at the crumbling facility. We have to go. They limped away from the facility, towards the designated rendezvous point. As they arrived, the remnant fleet was positioned defensively, weapons charged, ready to jump. They were safe for now. The remnant fleet ripped through the void, alarms blaring a discordant symphony of near disaster. Red lights pulsed across the bridge of the Dauntless, bathing Johnson's face in an ominous glow. He gripped the arms of his command chair, the adrenaline barely masking the searing pain in his side. Status report. He barked, his voice strained. Multiple council cruisers in pursuit, Commander. Lieutenant Hall's fingers danced across her console. They're deploying interceptors, shields at 60% and falling. Evasive maneuvers, divert power to engines. Get us out of here. Johnson slammed a fist on the armrest. The Dauntless shuddered violently as it twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy blasts. Through the viewport, Johnson watched as smaller remnant vessels weaved through the chaos, returning fire with deadly precision. The facility, now a burning wreckage, receded into the distance. Hours later, the Dauntless limped into a desolate corner of space, far from any known hyperspace lanes. The alarms were silent, replaced by the hum of life support and the creaks of stressed metal. Johnson lay in his quarters, his side wrapped in bandages. The med unit had stabilized him, but the pain lingered, a constant reminder of his near-death experience. Lyra's face, contorted in fear, flashed through his mind. He wondered if he'd made the right choice trusting her. Astra entered, her Andromedan features etched with concern. She carried a tray with a steaming cup of herbal tea. "Commander," she said softly, "how are you feeling?" Johnson pushed himself up on his elbows, wincing. "Like I went 10 rounds with a draconian berserker." He accepted the tea, taking a tentative sip. "What's the damage report?" "Significant," Astra replied, her voice heavy. "We lost 2 corvettes and sustained heavy damage to the Vindicator, but we made it, that's what matters." She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. I am sorry, Commander, about Lyra, about everything my people did." Johnson studied her, his eyes narrowed. Sorry isn't going to bring Earth back, Astra, or Lyra for that matter. He took another sip of tea, the bitterness mirroring his mood. What makes you think I can trust you? You were part of that facility. You worked for the people who wiped us out. Astra's eyes welled up with tears. I know it's not enough, but I want to help. I want to atone. I never believed in what the Council did. I was just a scientist, blinded by the pursuit of knowledge, but I see now and I want to make things right. She met his gaze, her voice pleading. Lyra, she trusted you. She gave her life to help you. Please, don't let her sacrifice be in vain. Johnson remained silent for a long moment, his face unreadable. He remembered Lyra's last words, the coordinates she had whispered before the explosion. The archive, he said finally, his voice hoarse. Where is it? Astra took a deep breath. Based on the coordinates Lyra gave you, it's located on a remote, uncharted planet. It's deep within the Crimson Nebula. Navigating through there will be treacherous, and the Council likely has patrols in the area. Johnson nodded slowly. Then that's where we're going. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, ignoring the pain that shot through his side. Prepare the fleet for hyperspace jump. Set course for the Crimson Nebula. On the bridge of the Dauntless, the crew buzzed with activity as they prepared for the next leg of their journey. Commander Reyes approached Johnson, his expression grim. Commander, are you sure about this? Trusting information from a Council scientist, it could be a trap. I know the risks, Commander, Johnson replied, his voice firm. But we have no other leads. We have to take the chance. With all due respect, Commander, Reyes persisted, we lost good people back there. We can't afford to throw away more lives chasing a ghost. It's not a ghost, Commander, Astra interjected, her voice surprisingly strong. It's our history, our heritage, and we deserve to know the truth. Johnson turned to Astra. The data Lyra gave me. It's partially corrupted. Can you fix it? Astra nodded. I believe so. I'll need access to the ship's data core, but I'm confident I can recover the complete coordinates. Hours later, Astra emerged from the data core, her face illuminated by the glow of her tablet. I've done it, she announced. I've repaired the corrupted data. I have the exact coordinates for the archive planet. She paused, her expression clouding over. But there's something else. A warning. It appears there's a guardian system protecting the planet. It could be a trap. As the Dauntless and the remaining ships of the remnant fleet hurtled towards the Crimson Nebula, a distress signal crackled over the comms system. It was faint, garbled, but the message was clear. This is the colony of Haven. Under attack. Require immediate assistance. Johnson frowned. Where's the signal coming from? Uncharted system, Commander, Lieutenant Hall replied. Human colony, apparently, but it's far off our course, days away, even at maximum warp. Johnson turned to his crew, his face grim. We have a choice to make. We can ignore the distress call and continue on our mission, or we can risk diverting resources and exposing ourselves to danger to help these people. Commander, with all due respect, Reyes said, we can't afford to get sidetracked. The archive is our priority, these colonists. They're not our responsibility. They're human, Commander, Johnson countered, his voice rising, just like us, and they need our help. The bridge fell silent as the crew waited for Johnson's decision. He closed his eyes, wrestling with his conscience. The faces of the fallen flashed through his mind. But he also saw the faces of the colonists, desperate and afraid. He opened his eyes, his gaze resolute. Set course for the Haven colony. We're going to help them. The crew responded with a mix of relief and apprehension. As the Dauntless changed course, a murmur of dissent rippled through the ranks. Some felt Johnson was making a mistake, that he was prioritizing sentiment over strategy. Upon reaching the Haven system, the remnant fleet was met with a scene of chaos and destruction. The colony was under siege by a group of heavily armed scavengers. Their ships, sleek and black, darted around the colony's defenses, unleashing a relentless barrage of fire. They're using cloaking technology, Commander, Hall exclaimed. Advanced stuff. We're having trouble locking onto them. Then we'll do it the old-fashioned way, Johnson replied, his voice grim. Raise, take point. I want those scavengers wiped out. Astra, can you scan their ships for any unique energy signatures? The remnant fleet engaged the scavengers, their superior technology and tactics proving decisive. The Dauntless led the charge, its energy cannons tearing through the scavenger ship's shields. The remnant pilots, seasoned veterans of countless battles, outmaneuvered their cloaked opponents with ease. Amidst the chaos, Astra's voice crackled over the comms. Commander, I've detected a unique energy signature emanating from the scavenger flagship. It's unlike anything I've ever seen, but it matches the energy readings from the Council research facility. The Council, Johnson muttered, his fist clenching. I knew it, they're behind this. With the scavengers routed, Johnson landed a contingent of troops on the colony. He was greeted by the colony's leader, a grizzled old man named Elias. Thank you, Elias said, his voice choked with emotion. You saved us, but they were after something we hid. What were they after? Johnson asked. Elias hesitated. A data storage device. It contains information about the Council's secret experiments. We found it years ago, buried in the ruins of an ancient research station. Johnson secured the data storage device. Back on the Dauntless, he examined it closely. It was small, unassuming, but he knew it held valuable information. Astra, can you decipher this? Astra took the device, her brow furrowed in concentration. I'll do my best, Commander, but the encryption is complex. It could take some time. With the rescued colonists aboard and the mysterious data storage device in their possession, the remnant fleet resumed its journey towards the Crimson Nebula. Johnson stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, gazing out at the swirling colors of the nebula. It was a beautiful yet treacherous place. Astra, Johnson said, focus on deciphering that data storage device. I want to know what the Council is hiding. I'm on it, Commander, Astra replied. As the Dauntless plunged deeper into the Crimson Nebula, the sensors began to detect unusual energy readings. Commander, Hall announced, her voice tense, we're approaching the Archive planet, but there's something else. A powerful energy field. It's like a guardian system. We're being scanned. Johnson gripped the arms of his command chair, his eyes narrowed. Prepare for battle, he ordered. We're about to find out what's guarding our past. The Archive planet swam into view, a pale green orb against the black velvet of space. But it wasn't the promise of ancient knowledge that greeted them. It was a storm of energy fire. Automated defense platforms, jam-packed with weaponry unlike anything they'd encountered before, ringed the planet. Beams of crimson energy lanced out, followed by volleys of pulsating plasma and shimmering disruptor bolts. Guardian system active. A voice shrieked over the comms. Multiple platforms, unknown configuration. Johnson's teeth gritted. All ships engage the defense platforms. Prioritize shield integrity. Astra, what are you seeing? The battle erupted. The remnant fleet, outnumbered but not outgunned, unleashed a furious barrage of their own. Lasers crisscrossed the void, painting the defense platforms in blinding light. Explosions blossomed, rocking the ships and sending shrapnel spinning into the void. The platforms, however, were resilient, their shields shimmering and deflecting the worst of the assault. Johnson watched as one platform unleashed a wave of energy that seemed to phase through the shields of a nearby cruiser, causing it to erupt in flames. They're using tech from at least 4 different alien species. Astra's voice crackled, strained but focused. The energy weapon that just bypassed our shields. I recognize the signature. It's Volchromion from the Andromeda Galaxy. They were thought to be extinct. As the battle raged, Astra worked feverishly at her console, trying to decipher the data storage device recovered from the colony. Energy emissions from the Guardian system pulsed through the ship, creating static on her screens and blurring the data. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she fought to maintain a lock. I'm getting interference, she gasped. It's like the whole planet is a giant Faraday cage. Suddenly, her fingers flew across the keyboard. I've got something, schematics. Weapon schematics, Council weapon designation Annihilator. Designed to kill all organic life within a specified radius while leaving technology intact. A chill ran down Johnson's spine. Where is it located? A separate planet, Astra replied, her voice trembling. Coordinates locked, it's within striking distance. The discovery of the Annihilator threw the fleet into turmoil. The ghosts of Earth, their digital voices echoing in Johnson's mind, clamored for immediate action. Destroy the weapon. One of them, a digitized general, boomed. That's our priority, the archive can wait. No, another, a historian, countered. We need to know what happened to Earth. The archive is our legacy. Johnson gripped the arms of his command chair, his mind racing. Destroying the weapon would save countless lives, but abandoning the archive would mean losing a vital piece of their history. Admiral, we're taking heavy damage. The comms officer shouted, interrupting his thoughts. Shields are down on 2 cruisers. We can't sustain this much longer. He had to make a choice. A risky one. Prepare a cloaked shuttle, he ordered. I'm taking a team to the surface. We'll secure the archive while the fleet maintains a diversion. The journey to the planet's surface was fraught with peril. The shuttle, battered from the space battle, shuddered violently as it pierced the atmosphere. Unexpected turbulence threw them around the cabin. Atmospheric interference is off the charts, the pilot reported grimly. I'm losing control. With a bone-jarring crash, the shuttle slammed into the alien landscape, crumpling like tinfoil. Johnson groaned, struggling to regain his senses. The emergency lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows. Report, he barked. We're down, a crewman replied, coughing. Everyone's alive, but the shuttle's a wreck. Comms are out. Johnson pushed himself to his feet, his head throbbing. He looked around, but Astra was nowhere to be seen. Astra, he called out. Astra, respond. I'm here, her voice came from the shadows. I'm all right, but I think I twisted my ankle. He found her slumped against a wall, clutching her leg. Can you walk? I'll manage, she said, gritting her teeth. They emerged from the wreckage into a world unlike anything they had ever seen. Towering trees with bioluminescent leaves cast an eerie glow on the landscape. Strange, clicking sounds echoed through the air. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something else. Something acrid and metallic. Sensors are picking up unusual energy readings, Johnson said, activating his weapon. Stay alert. As they moved deeper into the alien forest, they encountered strange flora and fauna. Plants that recoiled at their touch, emitting a high-pitched whine. Creatures with iridescent scales that scuttled away at the slightest movement. Suddenly, a beam of energy lanced out from the shadows, narrowly missing Johnson. He whirled around, raising his weapon. Wait, Astra cried. Don't shoot, I think I know what's happening. She examined a nearby plant, its leaves drooping. These organisms, they're highly reactive to our weapons. The energy emissions disrupt their biological processes. So, we can't use our weapons, Johnson said, lowering his gun. Great. Not entirely, Astra replied. We just need a non-violent approach. I think I can adapt my scanner to mimic the energy signatures they use to communicate. Working together, they modified Astra's scanner, creating a device that emitted a series of clicks and whistles. The plants seemed to respond, their leaves unfurling. The creatures emerged from their hiding places, their iridescent scales shimmering in the light. It's working, Astra said, a smile spreading across her face. They're letting us pass. They continued their journey, navigating the alien landscape with caution, relying on Astra's scanner to guide them. Their trust in each other deepened with each step, a silent acknowledgement of their growing interdependence. Finally, they reached their destination, a massive structure of obsidian-like stone, half buried in the earth, the archive entrance. It was heavily sealed, protected by a shimmering energy barrier. That barrier, Astra murmured, her eyes wide. I've never seen anything like it, the energy signature. It's from a species that was presumed extinct millennia ago. She ran her scanner over the barrier, her brow furrowed in concentration. There's something else. A unique energy signature within the barrier itself. I've seen it before. Her eyes widened in realization. It's the same signature as the energy weapon on the scavenger flagship. Johnson's mind raced. The Council knew about this archive. They used the scavengers to try and secure it, but they failed to crack the code. He turned to Astra. Can you disable it? Astra nodded, her fingers flying across her console. I can try. I'll need the scavenger data and some time. Hours passed. Johnson stood guard, his weapon raised, his senses on high alert. Astra worked tirelessly, her face illuminated by the glow of her screen. The silence was broken only by the hum of her equipment and the occasional rustle of the alien foliage. I'm close, she said, her voice tight with concentration. But something's missing. A key component. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was the colony leader they had rescued, his face etched with a sinister grin. Impressive, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You made it this far, but your journey ends here. He pressed a button on his wrist device. The energy barrier flickered and died. You, Johnson growled, raising his weapon. You're with the Council. Of course, the colony leader sneered. Did you really think we would let you waltz in here and steal our secrets? My mission was to secure the archive for the Council, and to ensure that all knowledge of Earth's history is erased forever. He activated another device. A low hum filled the air. What are you doing? Astra cried. Activating the self-destruct sequence, the colony leader replied, his eyes gleaming with hatred. In a matter of minutes, this entire archive will be reduced to dust, and you along with it. The ground began to tremble, alarms blared, dust rained down from the ceiling. We have to get out of here, Astra shouted, scrambling to her feet. Johnson ignored her. His eyes were fixed on the colony leader. Why? He demanded. Why do you hate us so much? Because you're a plague, the colony leader spat. A cancer on the galaxy. The Council was right to erase you, and I will make sure that you never rise again. He lunged at Johnson, a knife glinting in his hand. Johnson sidestepped the attack, knocking the knife away with his weapon. He could kill him, end this now, but time was running out. The archive was collapsing around them. We can't waste time with him, Astra cried, pulling at his arm. We have to disable the self-destruct. Johnson hesitated, his hand hovering over the trigger. He glanced at Astra, her face pale with fear. He knew what he had to do. He grabbed Astra's hand and pulled her towards the main chamber. They had to disable the self-destruct sequence, and they had to do it now. But as they ran, he knew that they were facing an impossible choice. Save the archive or save themselves. The klaxons blared, a relentless, guttural shriek that vibrated through Johnson's bones. Red emergency lights strobed across Astra's face, highlighting the frantic calculations dancing in her eyes. It's no use, she shouted over the din, her voice tight with desperation. Conventional overrides are locked out. The self-destruct is hardwired into the core. We have, at best, 15 minutes. Astra slammed her fist on the console, then her eyes widened. Wait, there's a failsafe, a contingency protocol. It requires a unique energy signature to bypass the lockdown. Energy signature? What kind? Johnson gripped his pulse rifle, already scanning the corridor for threats. The automated defenses were going to kick in any minute. From the Krill, Astra said, her fingers flying across the console. An extinct species, they were. Advisors to the original architects of this archive. The failsafe is keyed to their bioenergetic field. Johnson cursed. Extinct is the operative word. We don't have time for an archaeological dig. The scavenger tech, Astra countered, her voice rising with urgency. The device we recovered from the derelict ship. It's designed to analyze and replicate alien energy signatures. It's a long shot, a purely theoretical application. But it's our only chance. Then make it happen, Johnson barked, shoving her towards a junction panel. I'll keep the tin cans busy. He activated his personal shield and charged into the corridor, pulse rifle blazing. Automated turrets swiveled to target him, spitting plasma bolts that sizzled against his shield. He returned fire, each shot a precise burst aimed at the turret's optical sensors. Astra scrambled to connect the scavenger data device to the Archive's core systems. Sparks flew as she bypassed safety interlocks, her movements a blur of focused energy. Her hands trembled slightly. Flashback. A young council agent, barely out of training, stands on a desolate, smoke-choked world. Scorched buildings crumble around him. The air is thick with the stench of burning flesh. He stares wide-eyed at the bodies of men, women, and children, all human, all dead. A superior officer claps him on the shoulder. This is what happens when you let humanity run unchecked. Remember this day, recruit. Never forget what they are capable of. Suddenly, the console in front of Astra erupted in a shower of sparks. He's trying to override me remotely, she yelled. The council agent. He's triggering a system overload. Johnson, hearing the distress in her voice, sprinted back to the core. He saw the console smoking, the air thick with the smell of ozone. What do you need? Power. I need to reroute power from the comms array to stabilize the scavenger device. Without hesitation, Johnson ripped the comms unit from his armor, severing the connection. Take it now. He slammed the unit into the designated port, ignoring the protesting whine of the overloaded system. The console flickered, then stabilized. Astra took a deep breath. It's working. I'm replicating the Krill energy signature. Almost. There. Suddenly, the console flashed a new error message. Damn it. A secondary authorization code is required. It's tied to the Archive's original architect. Who was that? Johnson asked, firing his pulse rifle at a sparking conduit. An Andromedan scientist named Lyra, Astra said, her voice imbued with a strange mix of awe and sadness. She opposed the Council's decision to erase Earth. She believed in preserving knowledge, not destroying it. A shared history, a common thread woven through the tapestry of betrayal and regret. Can you access her code? Maybe, Astra said, her fingers dancing across the console. I'm accessing her personal logs. Encrypted, but I think I can crack them. There, she gasped. A hidden message. A reference to a remote research outpost. She must have left a backup of the code there. How far? Johnson asked, his voice grim. Too far, Astra replied, shaking her head. Even if we could get there, we don't have the time. The Archive groaned, a sound like a dying beast. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. That's it, Johnson said grimly. How much time do we buy with this failsafe? Not enough, Astra said, her voice barely a whisper. Maybe 5 minutes. It's only a partial shutdown, slowing the process, not stopping it. The lights flickered and died, plunging the core into near darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting long, distorted shadows. The Archive was dying, its systems failing one by one. Holographic projectors sputtered to life, displaying fragmented images of Earth's past. A bustling city street, a lush forest, a soaring rocket launched glimpses of a world erased from the galaxy's memory. Johnson stopped, mesmerized by the fleeting images. He saw children laughing, artists creating, scientists discovering a vibrant, thriving civilization. The Council's propaganda, the lies, the distortions washed away in the face of this undeniable truth. His drive hardened, his grief channeled into a burning purpose. We're not leaving this place empty-handed, he growled. There has to be a way to save this data. Astra nodded, her eyes fixed on a massive, crystalline structure at the center of the core, the Archive's primary data storage unit. The only way to save the information is to physically remove the core, but it's incredibly dangerous. The extraction process will trigger every failsafe protocol in the system. Then let's get to it, Johnson said, his voice unwavering. Astra moved towards the core, her hands outstretched. As she initiated the extraction sequence, a high-pitched whine filled the air. Suddenly, a shimmering energy field slammed down around the core, trapping Astra inside. Astra. Johnson yelled, rushing towards the field. He slammed against the invisible barrier, but it held firm. Astra looked up at him, her face pale with fear. "He's locked me in, the Council agent. He's activated the containment field remotely." Rage surged through Johnson, a white-hot fury that blotted out everything else. He grabbed his comms unit, the one he'd salvaged from his armor, and desperately tried to establish a connection. Static crackled in his ear, then a distorted voice emerged. "Johnson," the Council agent sneered. "Did you really think you could defy the Council? This archive is too dangerous to exist. Its secrets must be destroyed." "You'll pay for this," Johnson snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "I promise you I will make you pay." "Fool," the agent laughed. "Do you even know what's in that archive? It's a repository of forbidden knowledge, of technology that the Council has suppressed for millennia, including data on advanced human technology, capabilities the Council feared most. Humanity was too dangerous. And now you will die with the last vestiges of their secrets." Johnson stared at the containment field, at Astra trapped inside, at the data core that held the key to humanity's past. He had a choice to make, an impossible choice. Save Astra or save the archive. And in that moment, facing the impossible, Johnson made a decision that surprised even himself. Johnson didn't hesitate. The ghosts could scream their objections into the void. Astra was his priority now. He spun, grabbing a discarded plasma cutter from a fallen drone. "Sealing field breach imminent." A synthesized voice shrieked from his helmet HUD. He began welding together pieces of the drone's energy core and focusing lens, ignoring the sparks that showered around him. "Johnson, that's madness. The archive. 3,000 years of lost history." A ghost, its voice echoing with centuries of regret, pleaded in his mind. Before him, the containment field flickered violently, its blue hue intensifying as the Council agent, somewhere in the depths of the station, tightened his grip on the remote controls. Energy arced across the surface, burning the air with the scent of ozone. Within the field, Astra, her face pale but resolute, worked furiously at a panel. "Johnson, he's overloading the generators. I can reroute the power, buy you some time, but it's going to be messy." Her voice was strained, infused with static. The Council agent's hands trembled as he adjusted the containment field's parameters. He saw their faces even now, the colonists screaming as their ships burned. It had been a retaliatory strike, he knew, but all he could see was the inferno that had taken his parents, his world. The humans had to be stopped, despite the toll. Johnson finished his makeshift weapon. It was crude, jury-rigged, but it might be enough. He aimed the focusing lens at the containment field generator housing. "Brace yourself, Astra." He squeezed the trigger. A beam of raw energy erupted from the weapon, slamming into the containment field. The field shimmered, buckled, and for a fraction of a second a hole appeared, crackling with unstable energy. Then, with a groan of tortured metal, the field regenerated, stronger than before. "Damn it," Johnson swore. He tossed the useless weapon aside and grabbed a small reconnaissance drone from his belt. "Need a new approach." He launched the drone, its tiny camera relaying images of the generator housing. "Astra, I need structural schematics. Now, processing." "There, a weakness in the lower support struts. Manual override possible, but time is critical." Astra's fingers danced across the damaged control panel, rerouting power conduits. Sparks flew, and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. "Almost there." She cried out as a surge of energy coursed through her, throwing her back against the containment field. Johnson, meanwhile, fought his way through a maze of corridors toward the generator housing. Automated turrets swiveled, targeting him with pinpoint accuracy. He ducked behind a fallen support beam, plasma fire scorching the metal around him. He returned fire, his pulse rifle spitting bolts of energy, disabling the turrets one by one. He reached the generator housing, the air thick with the smell of burning metal and ozone. As he approached the control panel, a hiss filled the air. Security protocol activated, venting toxic gas. Astra's voice was barely audible. Johnson cursed. He activated his environmental suit, sealing himself off from the toxic atmosphere. He slammed a metal plate over a leaking vent, then another, until the flow of gas slowed to a trickle. He reached the generator controls. A complex array of lights and switches, but one thing stood out, a slot for a physical key. Astra, I need a key. Where is it? Hidden compartment. Within the generator itself. Behind the containment field, you'll need to breach it. Her voice was fading. Johnson aimed the jury-rigged weapon at the generator housing, pinpointing the hidden compartment. Here goes nothing. He fired. The energy beam sliced through the metal, revealing a small compartment. Inside, nestled in a protective cradle, was the key. But the act destabilized the generator. Alarms blared, and the entire structure began to shake. The archive was collapsing. A localized earthquake ripped through the chamber, sending debris crashing down around Johnson. A massive support beam slammed into the floor, trapping his leg. He cried out in pain. Johnson, can you hear me? Astra's voice, weak but clear, cut through the chaos. Trapped, leg pinned, can't move. There should be a secondary support system, earth engineering, triangle supports, look for, interlocking struts. Johnson, gritting his teeth against the pain, reached out, his fingers tracing the contours of the fallen beam. Found it. Interlocking struts. What now? Strike the keystone. Gently. Distribute the weight. He followed her instructions, carefully striking the keystone with his plasma cutter. The beam shifted slightly, relieving the pressure on his leg. He pulled free, wincing in pain. He reached the manual override, his hands shaking. He inserted the key. The alarms died. The containment field flickered, then vanished. He didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, grabbing Astra, pulling her from the collapsing core. He hoisted her into his arms, ignoring the pain in his leg. The archive. It's going to collapse, she gasped. We're getting out of here, Johnson said, his voice grim. As he carried Astra through the crumbling corridors, the ghosts continued their debate. Let her die, Johnson. Save the archive. One shrieked. She's one of them. She deserves to die. But Johnson ignored them. Astra was no longer one of them. She was his responsibility. Suddenly, a new alarm blared, louder than before. A red light flashed on the control panel. Failsafe activated, timed explosive, near the primary data core. Astra's voice was filled with dread. Johnson pushed forward, his leg throbbing with pain. He reached the data core, a massive crystalline structure humming with power. But there, attached to its base, was a small metallic device with a blinking red light. Can you disarm it? Johnson asked. Astra shook her head. Andromed tech. I don't recognize the trigger mechanism. It's beyond conventional disarming. Time was running out. Astra, her face pale, reached for her damaged comms device. Remnant Fleet, this is Astra. I'm transmitting. Coordinates. Her voice broke off. We're here. The faint hum of the Daedalus inertial dampeners resonated through Johnson's bones. He stared at the swirling nebula outside the viewport, a kaleidoscope of colors that had witnessed the birth and death of countless stars. A beautiful, indifferent backdrop to humanity's long, simmering rage. 3,000 years, a voice echoed in his mind, raspy and ancient. They took everything from us, Thomas, everything. Johnson hardened his face. It was Admiral Zhao, one of the ghosts of Earth, personalities imprinted on his neural pathways, offering strategic and historical insights. They were echoes of humanity's greatest minds, resurrected to guide the remnant fleet. But they were also a constant reminder of the Council's betrayal. We haven't forgotten, Admiral, Johnson said aloud, his voice low. But we can't let our anger cloud our judgment. Judgment. Another voice chimed in, this one sharper, more analytical. It was Dr. Aris Thorne, the brilliant but ruthless physicist. Judgment is a luxury we can't afford. The Council showed us no mercy. Why should we show them any? Because we're not them, Johnson snapped, his hand tightening on the armrest. We have to be better than them. Better, we're fighting for our survival, Zhao countered. This isn't about morality, Thomas, it's about vengeance, about reclaiming what was stolen from us. Astra entered the bridge, her Andromedan features betraying a hint of concern. Commander, are you all right? I heard voices. Johnson sighed, rubbing his temples. Just consulting with my advisors, Astra. He offered her a weary smile. They have strong opinions. Astra's multifaceted eyes flickered with understanding. I can imagine. The past can be a heavy burden, especially when it's been erased and rewritten, Johnson muttered. We're approaching the Council outpost, Commander, Lieutenant Hall announced from the helm. Preliminary scans indicate minimal defenses. Minimal defenses. Thorne's voice dripped with suspicion. That's convenient, isn't it? A little too easy. Agreed, Johnson said, his mind already racing. Hall, run a full spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about that outpost. What's its purpose? What are they hiding? It's a communications hub, Commander, Astra offered, stepping closer to the tactical display. It relays messages between Council sectors. Capturing it would give us access to their network. Access to their network, Zhao mused. Imagine the intelligence we could gather, the secrets we could uncover. It's also heavily encrypted, Astra added. Breaking through their firewalls will be difficult, but if we succeed, we could learn the location of key Council installations, troop movements, even their long-term strategic plans. Then we have no choice, Johnson said, his voice hardening. We take that outpost, but proceed with caution. Something doesn't feel right. He turned to Astra. Your expertise will be invaluable, Astra. I need you to help us crack those encryption codes. Of course, Commander, Astra replied, a flicker of dedication in her eyes. I will do everything I can. As the Daedalus moved into attack position, Johnson felt a knot of unease tighten in his stomach. The ghosts of Earth were clamoring for blood, for retribution. But Astra's presence, her quiet dedication, offered a glimmer of hope, a possibility that maybe, just maybe, humanity could find a path to peace, even after 3,000 years of darkness. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Commander, Hall shouted, we're being hailed, it's a Council fleet, and they know we're here. And they know we're here. Lieutenant Park's voice echoed through the bridge, tinged with urgency. Johnson turned from the main view screen, his gaze hardening. Acknowledged, all ships adjust to silent running. Increase ECM output by 15%. They'll be hunting for us now. He paused, his eyes narrowing. Anything else, Lieutenant? Sir, we've got a heavily encrypted Council communication detected moments before the alarm. Origin point. Relatively close. Johnson strode towards the sensor console. Show me. The tactical display flickered, resolving into a complex web of energy signatures. Encryption level. Off the charts, sir. Something they don't want anyone to see. Astra, Johnson said, turning towards the Andromedan scientist who stood quietly near the command chairs. Your expertise is required. Think you can crack it? Astra approached the console, her iridescent eyes scanning the data stream. The encryption. It's Andromedan, highly advanced. I recognize some of the base algorithms, but there are modifications. Restricted military application, most likely. Can you decrypt it? Johnson pressed. Astra hesitated. It will take time. The code uses fractal mathematics, layering complexity upon complexity. Conventional methods will be inefficient. How inefficient? Days, perhaps weeks, without the proper key. Johnson swore under his breath. We don't have days or weeks. What do you need? A decryption key, specifically one tailored to this modified code. Such a key would likely be stored within a secure Council data vault. Accessing it would be difficult. Difficult, but not impossible, Johnson finished, his mind already racing. Lieutenant Park, pull up schematics of known Council data vaults in this sector. Astra, highlight potential key storage locations within those vaults. We're going shopping. He turned to face the bridge crew. We need that message decrypted, and we need it now. The risks are considerable, but the potential reward could be the key to everything. Hours later, a small contingent of human Marines, led by Captain Eva Rostova, infiltrated a Council data vault orbiting a desolate gas giant. The raid was swift, brutal, and efficient. Rostova's team bypassed security grids, neutralized guards with practiced ease, and located the designated key storage unit. But as they were extracting the key, a security team, alerted by a silent alarm, ambushed them. A firefight erupted, plasma bolts searing through the narrow corridors. The humans fought with desperate skill, their superior training and weaponry giving them a slight edge, but they were outnumbered. "Key secured, Captain," a Marine shouted over the din of battle. "Fall back, fall back." Rostova yelled, laying down suppressing fire. The team retreated, leaving behind 2 fallen comrades. The cost was high, but they had the key. Back on the flagship, Astra worked feverishly, inputting the decryption key into her console. The encrypted data stream began to unravel, revealing complex schematics and text. "I'm getting something," she announced, her voice tight with concentration. "Coordinates, a remote testing site, and references to Project Nullifier." Johnson leaned closer, his face grim. "Nullifier, what is it?" Astra continued decoding, her fingers flying across the console. "It appears to be a weapon of mass destruction." The ghosts of Earth, the implanted personalities offering historical and strategic advice, began to clamor in Johnson's mind. "Warn the others, we have to warn them." One cried. "No," another countered. "Let them destroy themselves, they deserve it. Risking exposure is foolish, we have to be smart about this." The cacophony of voices threatened to overwhelm him. Johnson banged his head on the armrest. "Silence, all of you." He took a deep breath, regaining control. "Astra, what's the status of the coordinates?" "Designated location is a remote system on the fringes of Council space. Minimal infrastructure, mostly uninhabited." "I don't like this," Johnson muttered. "Prepare for immediate jump. We're going to see what Project Nullifier is all about." The remnant fleet emerged from hyperspace near the designated coordinates. The system was unremarkable, a scattering of asteroids and a few gas giants. But as the sensors swept the area, they detected something massive. "Sir, we've got a cloaked structure," Lieutenant Park reported. "It's huge and heavily shielded." Astra gasped. That's a phase shift cannon. I've only seen theoretical designs. It's capable of generating destructive energy waves on a scale I can barely comprehend." "Rostova," Johnson said, activating the comm channel. "I need a stealth reconnaissance team on that structure. I want to know what they're building and how close they are to finishing it." Hours later, Rostova's voice crackled over the comm. "Sir, the structure is nearly complete. They're running final systems checks. The cannon is primed and ready for its first test firing." "Target?" Johnson asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Unknown, sir, but the energy readings, they're off the scale. Whatever they're planning to hit, it's going to be obliterated." Johnson's mind raced. He could order an immediate attack, disable the cannon before it could be fired. But that would expose the remnant fleet, triggering a full-scale Council retaliation. Or he could gather more intelligence, try to determine the target, but risk the cannon firing before they could act. The ghosts of Earth were in open warfare, their conflicting opinions tearing at his perseverance. "Strike now, we can't let them use that weapon." "Wait, we need to know who they're targeting. Maybe it's one of their own worlds. Let them suffer the consequences of their actions." Johnson closed his eyes, fighting to maintain control. He thought of Earth, of the billions who had perished. He thought of the sacrifices his people had made to survive. He thought of Astra and her willingness to help. He opened his eyes, his decision made. "Rostova, maintain covert surveillance. Do not engage. I want to know the target. I want to know everything." As the remnant fleet monitored the site, the phase shift cannon began to power up. Energy crackled around the structure, bathing the surrounding space in an eerie glow. The test firing sequence commenced, a countdown timer appearing on the main view screen. Then, with a blinding flash of light, the cannon fired. A wave of pure energy ripped through space, traveling at unimaginable speed. Moments later, a small, uninhabited moon in a neighboring system simply ceased to exist. Vaporized, gone. The flash seared across the long-range sensors, a momentary whiteout that eclipsed even the nearby stars. Then the readings plummeted. The moon, once a stable beacon in the system, was simply gone, not debris, not fragments, erased. Johnson gripped the arms of his command chair. The bridge crew stood frozen, their faces illuminated by the eerie afterglow on the main view screen. "Assessment," he barked, his voice tight. "Targeting solutions, now." Alarms blared as the tactical officer scrambled to recalibrate. "Sir, the energy signature is unlike anything we've encountered. It's selective, almost surgical." Astra, pale but composed, stepped forward. "It's designed to target planets with specific geological compositions, Commander. Mineral resonances. It's not indiscriminate." The ghosts of Earth stirred within Johnson's mind. "Target their homeworlds," roared a voice, the simulated timbre of a Roman general. "Annihilate them as they annihilated us." Another, quieter, countered, the voice of a 20th-century physicist. "Destroy the weapon, Thomas, before it can be used again, whatever it takes." Johnson ignored them, focusing on Astra. "You knew about this, didn't you?" His gaze burned into her. "More than you've told us." Astra flinched. "My research division. We knew of the Nullifier project. But we were told it was a defensive measure, a deterrent." Her voice trembled. "We didn't know its true capabilities." Distrust coiled in Johnson's gut, but he couldn't deny the urgency. "Can you disable it remotely?" "There may be a way," she said, her eyes fixed on the sensor readings. "A vulnerability in the power core, but exploiting it. It would require bypassing multiple security protocols I helped design." "Then design a bypass," Johnson snapped. "I don't care how you do it, just do it." He turned to the tactical officer. "Prepare a diversionary attack. Draw their forces away from the cannon. Give her an opening." The remnant fleet sprang to life. Corvettes darted forward, launching a series of hit-and-run attacks on nearby Council outposts. Lasers flashed, explosions rocked the void, and the comm channels crackled with reports of damage inflicted and received. "Sir, Council reinforcements are arriving," the tactical officer reported, his voice strained. "They're converging on our position." The pressure mounted. Johnson felt the familiar adrenaline surge, the cold focus that had kept him alive for centuries. But this was different. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for the future. Suddenly, alarms shrieked. "Unidentified vessel decloaking." The sensor officer yelled. "Bearing, right on top of us, it's Council class. Boarding party launched." A shudder ran through the flagship as magnetic grapples slammed against its hull. Red lights pulsed, bathing the bridge in an ominous glow. "They're targeting the bridge," the security chief shouted. "They want you and the Andromedan." The security team, clad in battered but effective combat armor, moved to intercept. The airlocks hissed open, and the sounds of battle echoed through the corridors. The staccato bursts of plasma rifles, the guttural cries of the Council soldiers, the desperate shouts of the human defenders. Johnson gripped a sidearm, his squeezing hard. Astra huddled beside him, her eyes wide with fear. A searing pain ripped through Astra's shoulder. She cried out and collapsed. A security officer went down beside her, plasma burns charring his armor. Ignoring the chaos, Astra fumbled with her console, her fingers flying across the holographic display. Almost there." She gasped, sweat beading on her forehead. "I've accessed the core systems. Initiating shutdown sequence." "Intrusion detected." A Council voice blared over the comm system. "Override in progress." Astra's face contorted in pain and concentration. "The shutdown. It's going to overload the core," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It'll destroy the cannon, but it could also trigger a massive explosion." Johnson stared at her, his mind racing. "Abort the sequence." Save the fleet but leave the nullifier operational, a constant threat hanging over their heads, or proceed, destroy the weapon and risk annihilation. The ghosts of Earth screamed in his mind, a cacophony of conflicting advice, but one voice, the quiet physicist, cut through the noise. Sometimes, Thomas, the only way to win is to risk everything. He made his decision. Continue the sequence, Astra. As the shutdown sequence progressed, a coded message flashed across Astra's console, seemingly from within the Council network. It was short, terse, and terrifying. Failsafe activated. Cannon destruction will trigger secondary weapon. Error. Content tag content part 17 not found in response. Raw text length. 11,527 characters. The remnant fleet decelerated, their hulls shimmering as they adjusted to the debris-strewn space surrounding the location of the distress signal. Project Blackstar, or what remained of it, drifted amidst the wreckage of a space station, a grotesque monument to unchecked power. The weapon's massive frame was scarred and twisted, metal peeled back like burnt skin. "Anything, Lieutenant?" Johnson asked, his voice tight. "Still emitting a weak energy signature, Commander," the lieutenant replied, "and we're picking up a garbled audio message, patching it through." Static crackled through the bridge, punctuated by bursts of distorted speech. Then a voice, weak and strained, cut through the noise. "Sabotage, Blackstar, Council, caught." Launch sequence. The message dissolved back into static. "Can you clean that up?" Johnson pressed. A moment later, the lieutenant spoke. "Partial decryption, Commander. The message appears to be a distress call from a small group of Council scientists. They claim they were trying to sabotage Project Blackstar and were caught in the weapon's launch sequence. Traitors, or a trap?" The ghost of Admiral Reyes whispered in Johnson's mind. "Council scum are never to be trusted." But another voice, the DRST of Dr. Aris Thorne, countered. "Admiral, with respect, we cannot afford to be blinded by hatred. If they are telling the truth, they could possess valuable intelligence regarding the weapon's weaknesses." Johnson rubbed his temples, the conflicting voices a familiar burden. "Astra, what's your assessment?" "It is plausible, Commander," Astra said, her brow furrowed. "The Council is not monolithic. There are factions, dissenters. It is not impossible that some would oppose such a weapon." "Prepare a heavily shielded shuttle," Johnson ordered, his decision made. "I'm going to investigate. Astra, you're with me. I want your expertise on site." The shuttle, a heavily armored craft designed for breaching hostile environments, sliced through the debris field, its shields deflecting chunks of twisted metal and frozen coolant. Project Blackstar loomed before them, a colossal ruin against the backdrop of the void. "Multiple life signs detected within the weapon, Commander," the pilot announced, his voice tense. "Confirmed." "At least a handful." Johnson gripped his pulse rifle, his senses on high alert. "Maintain a defensive perimeter. We go in." The interior of Project Blackstar was a charnel house of twisted metal and sparking wires. Gravity fluctuated wildly, forcing Johnson and Astra to use magnetic clamps to navigate the wreckage. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and burning flesh. They found them huddled in a damaged control room, a small group of Council scientists, their uniforms torn and bloodied. One clutched a makeshift bandage to his head, his face pale with shock. You came," one of the scientists stammered, his voice hoarse. "We tried to stop it, to sabotage the weapon, but it was too late." "You claim you were trying to sabotage Project Blackstar," Johnson said, his voice hard. "Why should I believe you?" "Because," the scientist coughed, blood flecking his lips, "because we knew what it truly was. It's not just a kinetic weapon, Commander. It carries a self-replicating nanite payload, designed to strip planets of their resources, to leave them barren husks." Astra gasped, her eyes wide with horror. She scrambled to a damaged console, her fingers flying across the controls. "Commander, he's right. I'm detecting nanite activity. The payload has been partially activated. They're spreading through the debris field." "How long?" Johnson asked, his voice grim. "At this rate?" Astra's voice trembled. If they reach a populated system, they will consume everything. Metal, water, atmosphere, everything. Johnson stared at the ravaged weapon, the redirected threat now amplified 100-fold. We stopped it from hitting its original target, he thought grimly, only to unleash something far worse. There is a failsafe, the ghost of General MacArthur boomed in Johnson's mind. An EMP bomb planted on the weapon by the Council, designed to wipe it out if it ever became uncontrollable. There's an EMP failsafe, Johnson said, relaying the information. Can it be activated? Astra shook her head. Inactive, Commander. The system is offline. One of the scientists spoke, his voice barely a whisper. It can be reactivated, manually, but it would require someone to stay behind the activation sequence. It's too dangerous. Activating the EMP would destroy the nanites, preventing a galactic catastrophe. But it would also kill the scientists, the only witnesses to the Council's treachery, the only source of potential intelligence. Commander, Astra pleaded, her voice filled with desperation. We have to do something. These nanites, they are a plague. We cannot let them spread. Johnson stood frozen, caught between the ghosts of his past and the potential annihilation of the future. Save the scientists or save all of the galaxy. It was an impossible choice. Suddenly, alarms blared on the shuttle, red lights flashing. Commander, incoming, Council patrol ship. They're preparing to attack. Evasive maneuvers. All hands brace for impact. Johnson barked, his voice cutting through the sudden klaxon. Red alerts pulsed across the bridge of the Dauntless. The ship lurched violently as the Council patrol ship's energy bolts slammed against their shields. Return fire. Prioritize the shuttle's protection. Johnson ordered, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Get me a weapons lock now. Sir, Astra's identified a weakness in their energy matrix, a harmonic resonance frequency. A young ensign shouted over the din. Exploit it. All batteries target that frequency. The Dauntless unleashed a concentrated barrage. The patrol ship's shields flickered, then buckled. A direct hit tore through its hull. They're sending a distress signal. Another voice called out. Council reinforcements inbound. Johnson's expression resolute. We can't stay and fight. Order the fleet to disengage. Protect the shuttle at all costs. Get us out of here. He knew Project Blackstar was still a ticking clock, but he couldn't risk losing the fleet. Back on the Dauntless, the captured Council scientists were huddled in the brig, their faces pale with fear. You don't understand. One of them, a gaunt Xyler, pleaded. We can help you. We have valuable intelligence about the Council, their strategies, their weaknesses. He's right, Anoyne, a bulky Gorn, chimed in. We know the location of a hidden research facility where Project Blackstar was initially developed. It holds all the secrets. A third scientist, a trembling DRAN woman named Dr. Reyes, interjected, activating that EMP might not completely destroy the nanites. It could trigger an even more dangerous reaction. You have to be careful. Inside Johnson's mind, the ghosts of Earth personalities were at each other's throats. We must act decisively. Humanity's survival is at stake. Activate the EMP now, roared General Patton. No, we need information. Knowledge is our greatest weapon, countered Marie Curie, her voice imbued with urgency. Johnson rubbed his temples, his mind a battlefield of conflicting advice. He weighed the risks. Destroy the nanites now and risk a catastrophic chain reaction, or try to extract the scientists and gather more information, potentially exposing the fleet to further danger. Astra, he said, turning to her. Can we extract these scientists safely, minimize the risk of nanite contamination? Astra considered for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. I can devise a plan. A specialized containment field modulated to their specific biosignatures. It's risky, but it's our best chance. Do it, Johnson ordered. Prepare for extraction. But be ready to sever the connection at a moment's notice. As the extraction began, a surge of energy pulsed from Project Blackstar. The lights flickered. Alarms blared. The containment field is failing. Astra shouted, her voice strained. The energy surge is disrupting the modulation. On the interface, the damaged space station was being consumed by a rapidly spreading gray cloud. The nanites were replicating at an alarming rate, engulfing everything in their path. They're adapting, Astra exclaimed, her fingers flying across the console. The nanites are evolving, becoming resisted, Doctor, to our energy weapons. Dr. Ray's voice crackled over the comms. Project Blackstar was designed to target specific genetic markers, but those have now been overwritten. They're not behaving as intended. Johnson's blood ran cold. The nanites were no longer just a threat to planets. They could potentially target all organic life in the galaxy. Just then, a garbled transmission broke through the static. It was from the Council patrol ship they thought they had destroyed. Probe deployed, monitoring Blackstar status. They deployed a probe. Johnson questioned, his mind racing. The signal cleared. A voice, weak but audible, spoke. Data transmitted. Nanites not working as Doctor tended. Unfold Doctor in effects. Dr. Ray's gasped. That's Dr. Hall. He was the lead engineer on Project Blackstar. He's saying. The nanites, Astra finished, her eyes wide with realization. They were originally engineered to terraform planets. That information was suppressed when the decision to weaponize them was made. Johnson stared at the rapidly expanding cloud of nanites on the monitor, his heart pounding. Destroy them and potentially trigger a catastrophic chain reaction, or attempt to use them for their original purpose to terraform barren worlds, to bring life to dead planets. Astra, he said, his voice low. What do we do? Weaponized terraforming, Astra said, her voice tight. Even now the Council seeks to twist creation into destruction. These nanites, they were meant to heal, to build. Johnson stood beside her on the bridge, the holographic display shimmering with the trajectory of the nanite payload aimed squarely at a Council stronghold. His hand clenched. They erased Earth, Astra. They deserve this. Astra turned, her Andromedan eyes filled with a plea that transcended species. And what does that make us, Thomas, if we become the monsters we seek to destroy? The ghosts whispered in his mind, urging retribution, demanding an eye for an eye. But another voice, fainter but growing stronger, argued for a different path. The voice of the ghost of Earth, the one who always spoke of hope. Johnson stared at the trajectory, at the cold, calculated path of destruction. He saw Earth not as it was, but as it could have been, as it should have been. He took a breath, the ghosts momentarily silent. Redirect the payload, he ordered, his voice firm. Target designation, LX-492, the lifeless planetoid. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the bridge crew. Captain, that's an order, Johnson interrupted, his gaze unwavering. We will not become what they made us. Astra's expression softened, a glimmer of hope replacing the anxiety. I can adapt the nanites, she said quickly, her fingers already flying across a console. Reprogram them for accelerated terraforming, and I can install a failsafe to prevent any unforeseen weaponization. Hours later, as the remnant fleet approached the lifeless planetoid, Johnson activated the comms system. His voice, amplified across the galaxy, cut through the static of Council propaganda. This is Captain Thomas Johnson of the Remnant Fleet, descendants of Earth. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council has hidden the truth about our destruction, painting us as warmongers, justifying our annihilation. But we are not the monsters they claim we are. We offer you proof. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. We offer you hope. We offer you the truth of Earth, and we offer our assistance in building a new galactic order, one based on justice, cooperation, and peace. While Johnson spoke, Astra, using her intimate knowledge of the Council's systems, infiltrated their main command center. Slipping through firewalls and bypassing security protocols she had once designed, she reached the central control nexus and initiated a cascade failure, disabling their long-range communication and weapon systems. The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, heard silence from the Council. Back on the Remnant Fleet flagship, Johnson presented the evidence. Recovered archives, intercepted communications, and Astra's own testimony laid bare the Council's lies. Holographic images flickered, showing the vibrant beauty of pre-wipe Earth, the calculated cruelty of the Council's decision, and the suffering of countless species under their oppressive rule. The truth, once buried, now blazed across the galaxy. Across the galactic expanse, the oppressed species stirred. Inspired by Johnson's message and the revelations, rebellions erupted on a scale unseen for millennia. Key systems fell, resources were seized, and the Council's grip on power began to crumble. In the quiet of his ready room, Johnson closed his eyesight, listening to the reports flooding in. He could almost hear the ghost of Earth, the one who spoke of compassion, smiling. He opened his eyes and spoke aloud. "You were right, revenge. It's a hollow victory. Building something new, that's where true strength lies." The Earth Archive was open to the galaxy. Its cultural treasures, artistic masterpieces, and scientific breakthroughs were shared freely, a testament to what had been lost and a beacon of what humanity could offer. Species marveled at the beauty of human music, the ingenuity of human inventions, and the depth of human emotion. One by one, the Council members complicit in the destruction of Earth and other atrocities were apprehended. They were publicly arrested, their faces etched with fear and disbelief, and brought before a newly formed intergalactic tribunal, where they would be held accountable for their crimes. Johnson stood beside Astra on the bridge of the remnant fleet flagship, watching the holographic displays as the galaxy changed. The battles still raged, but now they were battles for liberation, not oppression. "It's a long way to go," Astra said quietly, her hand resting on his. "But it's a start." Below them, on the surface of the lifeless planetoid LX-492, the first signs of life appeared. Microscopic organisms released by the reprogrammed nanites began to break down the barren rock, creating soil. Patches of green, fragile but resilient, emerged from the dust, reaching for the weak sunlight. An atmosphere, thin but growing, began to coalesce. Johnson looked out at the stars, at the vast expanse of the galaxy. He envisioned a future where humanity was not defined by its past trauma, but by its newfound commitment to peace and cooperation. A future where humans, alongside other species, explored the galaxy, shared their knowledge, and built a brighter future for all. A future where the ghosts of Earth could finally rest.